Happy Fantasy Friday to all you loyal listeners out there. Today we will take a look at some stardom or sit-em scenarios and sleepers with a little Seahawks Chargers flavor coming up on today's show.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12s. This is Nick Lee, your host for this weekly bonus episode of Locked On Seahawks. It's Fantasy Friday. We're going to discuss some stardom or sit-em scenarios with a little bit of a Seahawks Chargers theme, as well as a few players to watch around the league for a stardom or sit-em scenario. I try to give you a broader scope than just the current Seahawks matchup as well. And then I'll give you a few players that you might want to pluck up from the waiver wire if you need a boost this week, especially as bye weeks start rolling in. And also, I'm going to leave you today with one strategy tip that I've learned to be very useful in this fantasy season. This Fantasy Friday episode is brought to you by SimpliSafe. When it comes to burglars, your home is like the end zone, and you need the absolute strongest defense you can muster. This is why I use and trust SimpliSafe Home Security. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. It's cutting-edge technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. So always know your home is safe. SimpliSafe keeps my home safe with the best technology available, including the ability to control my system from my phone and watch my security cameras in crystal clear HD and use a variety of high-tech sensors for the best quality protection. And the best part? With 24/7 professional monitoring, SimpliSafe's agents call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency, even if you're not home or can't be reached. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplisafe.com/LockedOnNFL. Save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplisafe.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. Well, let's dive in now to some stardom or sit-em scenarios for this upcoming matchup with the Seahawks and the Chargers, then move on to a bit of a broader scope around the league. So I have three guys, I'll have four stardoms here, three from this matchup, one from around the league. The first one being Ken Walker, the running back for the Seattle Seahawks, coming off of a huge, biggest performance of his young NFL career, obviously. This week, he's projected at 13.1 points per my Yahoo League. He had 97 rushing yards, a touchdown, and 17 fantasy points last week against the Cardinals. And the best news is the Chargers have allowed the second most fantasy points to running backs this season in the entire NFL. So this is a prime matchup for Ken Walker III to get more action and more points this week. And he can become a pretty valuable running back down the stretch, I think, with him finding his footing in the NFL, especially building off some confidence of last week against the Arizona Cardinals. I think if he's somehow still available in your league, pick him up, because I think he's going to be a big player moving forward, especially with the unfortunate season-ending injury to Rashad Penny. So Ken Walker III is my first one. And then the running back on the other side, Austin Ekeler. Honestly, Ekeler is a stardom every darn week unless he's injured or on a bye. I mean, he leads all running backs in fantasy points per Yahoo, third in fantasy points in all of the league and among non-quarterbacks. There's no matchup too poor to bench him. It just if you have Austin Ekeler and he's healthy and the Chargers are playing, play Austin Ekeler. He is a fantasy darling, a stud. He very well could be on his way to perhaps a fantasy king, championship, or the top fantasy point getter in all the league. The Chargers really know how to use him. So, and I expect the Seahawks are going to have a bit of trouble wrangling Austin Ekeler. They're not going to stop him. I highly doubt they're going to shut him down, for long periods of time in this game to where he won't be a viable fantasy player. Even if the Seahawks do well against him, he still should get his and get some touches, some yards, maybe a touchdown or two. So Austin Ekeler, that's almost the most no-brainer one I've done so far. Start Austin Ekeler. That is an easy call. The one that's not such an easy call is my third one here for this matchup. Gerald Everett, the tight end for the Chargers. Pencil me in for the revenge game. I don't know if there's like any ill will really with Gerald Everett and the Seahawks from last year. But, you can usually count on a guy being extra motivated playing against an old team. He is projected at 8.3 points The Seahawks typically do have trouble against tight ends, and they're not exactly the stoutest defense in the league this year. So give me a Gerald Everett revenge game, and maybe sneaks in the end zone. He is a pretty darn good red zone threat when he's on. So I think 8.3 points is a good bet. Tight ends have struggled this year, but if you're looking for a pick me up on tight end, your tight end's on a hurt or on a bye, or your current tight end just hasn't been getting the job done. Not getting more than 3 or 4 or 5 points. Try Gerald Everett this week. I think that might be a viable option for you. He's pretty. I think he's somewhere around 70% rostered in my fantasy league. But if he's still available, pick him up. And then my stardom around the league is Allen Lazard, receiver from the Packers. They got their matchup against the Washington Commanders this week. Randall Cobb, the main receiver, Aaron Rodgers' favorite receiver there, with the departure of Devontae Adams, was just ruled out for that game against Washington. And the Commanders have allowed the third most fantasy points to receivers this year. And against the Bears last week, they let Dante friggin' Pettis rack up 14.4 fantasy points in their game against the Bears. So if a guy like Dante Pettis, who isn't exactly the world burner, world killer at the receiver position in the NFL, Allen Lazard, a pretty talented receiver in his own right, especially with the absence of Randall Cobb. Lazard now slots into the most comfortable receiver target Aaron Rodgers has in Green Bay. He and Aaron Jones will probably be the main targets for Rodgers on Sunday. So start Allen Lazard, pick him up, whatever you have to do if you have him available to pick up or start. He is my guy that I think will have a pretty decent game. Now for a couple sit-em scenarios. But this is kind of a cop-out, kind of an easy one. Honestly, the two star receivers for each side, Tyler Lockett is dealing with a hamstring issue. Actually, both these guys, Tyler Lockett and Keenan Allen. The severity, obviously, are a little different. Keenan Allen's been out since he played in the season opener in week 1 with a pretty darn serious nagging hamstring issue. Tyler Lockett has been not practicing this week. And even if he does play, I would still sit him just because he's not going to be 100%. And I think the Seahawks are really going to try to run the ball with Ken Walker, like I mentioned. So I don't know if there's going to be a ton there for Tyler Lockett, just with him being probably a little bit limited by that hamstring. With a guy of his style, his speed, his game, he's going to need to be healthy, and he's not going to be at his best. So there's no knock against Tyler Lockett. This is only health reasons. And Keenan Allen, same thing. It's kind of a 50-50 flip. I wouldn't risk keeping him in the lineup this week. Obviously, if he plays, if this, I'm recording this on Friday. If Saturday you hear he's a go, he's good, start him. Keenan Allen is a top 10 receiver in this league, but right now, and I wouldn't, if it's still up in the air Sunday morning, I would definitely stay away. He's clearly not right. And then my set him around the league is going to be James Robinson, the running back from the Jacksonville Jaguars, playing against the New York Giants for a few reasons. One, Travis Etienne is starting to come into his own a little bit, the Clemson draft pick. Trevor Lawrence's old teammate there. He's played in more snaps and has had more targets while seeing around the same number of carries in about 3 straight weeks compared to James Robinson. And so it's almost like there's a bit of a changing of the guard in Jacksonville with their running back position. Etienne is kind of starting to take on a bit more of the workload. So even if it's a shared workload, that's going to hurt James Robinson's value. He's been a great running back for the last couple seasons. Fantasy-wise, I think we might be starting to see a bit of a change in philosophy and strategy there in Jacksonville with the emergence of a healthy Travis Etienne. And then the second reason is the New York Giants have allowed just 19.9 fantasy points to running backs all season, which is just barely outside the top 10 among the NFL. They're pretty solid defense and seem to not allow running backs to have crazy good fantasy days. So that, coupled with maybe some limited action, he's not the main bell cow guy anymore, I would stay away and bench James Robinson for now. When I come back, I'll give you a few players to watch on the waiver wire as sleepers to pick up for a boost this week, plus a strategy tip. Don't go anywhere. This is the Fantasy Friday episode of Locked On Seahawks. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Welcome back to Fantasy Friday, the Fantasy Friday episode of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host for this weekly segment, Nick Lee. Let's talk sleepers now. These are the guys, again, that might not be the sexiest fantasy players. They're not usually the superstars. They're more than likely on your waiver wire, your free agent pool in your respective leagues. Usually they're rostered less than 50% around the league, maybe even less than that, maybe 25% or less. But they also face favorable matchups that could provide your team with a boost this week if you're dealing with injuries. And now we're starting to see the bye weeks roll in. And if you didn't have a good draft where you didn't look at the bye weeks, and all of a sudden you're starting to see, 2 or 3 of your receivers or 2 or 3, of your main starters on buys at the same week. Now that was one of my fantasy strategies. Watch out for that. Then you're going to be kind of at the mercy of the free agent wire, the free agent pool, the waiver wire to pick up guys to give you a boost. So now this is where this kind of comes in. So my first sleeper for this game, I'm going to give you 2 sleepers, one for this game, one around the league, is Chargers receiver DeAndre Carter. He's actually only 4% rostered around the league, so it's almost a guarantee that he is available in the league you play in. And he over the last 4 weeks, he actually has more fantasy points than guys like Randall Cobb, Allen Robinson, and Mecole Hardman, guys that can rack up some good fantasy points, when they're healthy. And then 2 guys on his own team, and Palmer and Donald Parham, are also hurt, along with Keenan Allen. So the options are pretty darn limited for quarterback Justin Herbert in this game. And DeAndre Carter has kind of arisen as obviously, you got Mike Williams, and you got Austin Ekeler, and those are the 2 big ones. Gerald Everett kind of in the middle there. But the next best option has become DeAndre Carter. So he could spring loose for, maybe a touch. Again, when I ever say sleepers, I'm not expecting these guys to go, 10 catches, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns, nothing like that. Maybe, 4 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown in a pinch. That could get it done for you. So a guy like DeAndre Carter, I think, is a guy worth picking up there this week. If you're really struggling with your receiver depth or at flex, pick up a guy that should see some targets, especially if Keenan Allen can't play, which is looking more and more like he won't. And my guy around the league is Michael Gallup. I know he's a bit more on the radar than DeAndre Carter. He's actually rostered about 56% on my fantasy league I play. The main thing here is Dak Prescott should be back with few, if any, limitations. So that should be huge. That should boost the whole Dallas offense. The Lions also, who the Cowboys play, allowed a couple weeks ago Patriots wide receiver Jacoby Myers to rack up 17.1 fantasy points before their bye. So the Lions are prone to allow a good receiver. Jacoby Myers isn't a world beater by any standards, but he's a solid receiver. A guy like Michael Gallup, I think, could feast on that, especially with the return of that coupled with the return of Dak Prescott. That should give a huge boost to Michael Gallup. So if you have him stashed away in your bench, or if he's still available in your league and you need some receiver help, I would probably go Michael Gallup over DeAndre Carter if I had to pick between the 2. But if Gallup's not available and you're looking for, especially if you want to have a little fun and go for a Seahawks-Chargers flavor, if the Seahawks lose and they get torched by DeAndre Carter, at least you had him on your fantasy team, right? So those are the 2 guys that I would certainly watch for to be sleepers this coming week with favorable matchups. Now, I want to end with a little fantasy tip that I've learned this year. And that is on your flex. Do not start. I know it's kind of late this week. I'm sorry if you already did this. Do not start Thursday night football, guys, in your flex. And here's why. Now, that is your most versatile spot. If you only have one, some people have 2 flexes. Say you start a guy that is playing Thursday night football there. He has an off night or he gets hurt even and just throws up a goose egg or 1 or 2 points there. Now that slot is done for the whole week. You can't swap in and out, guys. You're done. And then if you have some unexpected injuries around you, your receivers, your running backs, or a tight end or 2, you have some unexpected outs Sunday morning. You check the news Sunday morning with Ian Rappaport's and Adam Schefter's of the world, and all of a sudden your fantasy team is without a few more guys than you expected. You don't have the same flexibility as you would have if you would have left your flex spot open. Because if you leave your flex spot open, that gives you way more flexibility to swap guys in and out in case of injuries or favorable matchups. Maybe, a big defensive player that your receiver's playing got hurt. And so now all of a sudden, this is a very good defensive matchup for your receiver. You want to slaughter him in really fast. So give yourself as much flexibility as possible on Sunday morning when that news starts to roll in by leaving your flex open. Not open, but don't start a guy on Thursday Night Football on your flex, because then it's sealed. It's done. You can't mess with it after that on Thursday night, and you can't. It just limits your flexibility. So always opt for more flexibility there. That's just my tidbit I've learned this year even. So I hope that helps you. I hope that's a worthy tip for you. And again, I hope this is worth your time. I enjoy doing it. Again, this is not a perfect science, so don't blame me and show up at my house with pitchforks and torches if you go down swinging because of me. You know, I'm taking my own advice too. So just know if you're doing poorly, so am I. So you can follow me at NickLee51. I will try to. I'm trying to get more NFL stuff in there, but my Padres are in the NLCS, so I'm really excited about that. But so I might not be as fun of a follow right now if you're only into football, but I'll try to get it in there as much as I can. And remember, check your bye weeks, check Sunday morning for injuries. Don't get caught with your pants down, and always be alert. And again, I hope this is worth your time, and we'll see you next week. Go Hawks.